Say some gangster is dissing your fly girl. You just give him one of these.
What's up, guys? I'm back again for another review, and this time I'm going to be talking about Ghostbusters Afterlife. Now, what can you say about Ghostbusters that hasn't already been said? The original 1984 film has become one of the most iconic classic films of the 80s. I myself had a very interesting history with Ghostbusters, as I watched a little bit of the cartoon as a kid, but didn't see the classic everyone knows and love until I was a bit older, around 13 I would say. But that didn't change the fact that I ended up really loving this film, and honestly loved the franchise as a whole. So when a new Ghostbusters was set to come out in the near future that served as a continuation of the series, I honestly got pretty excited. Ghostbusters 3 was one of those will it ever happen sequels that seemed like it was never going to see the light of day, especially after the unfortunate passing of Harold Ramis. Though, now that quite some time has passed since then, and with studios being more focused on reviving old franchises, it seems like that third Ghostbusters movie was going to become a reality. Whether or not it would be a good movie was going to be something we would have to wait and see. But as someone who has always liked the idea of a third Ghostbusters movie coming into full fruition, I feel like this was the way to go. I mean, in this world we live in where live action Disney remakes exist, what are they gonna do? Remake the original Ghostbusters with a new cast with no ties to the original film and try to build a cinematic universe off of it? I mean, what kind of person would think that would have been a good idea? Anyway, so after all these years of waiting, and even a few more thanks to the pandemic, was Ghostbusters Afterlife worth the wait? In my honest opinion, yes. Ghostbusters Afterlife serves as a really good reintroduction to the Ghostbusters property, while also being one that satisfies fans of the original movie. The film is directed by Jason Reitman, who is not only the son of the original movie's director, Ivan Reitman, but he himself has made a career of making really small films about character relationships that feel very personal. While this movie is definitely a much bigger film than anything Jason Reitman has ever done, I think it still manages to stay true to the kind of movies that he would usually do, as this movie plays it rather low-key, with it being more centered around his family that do end up having ties to the Ghostbusters and their relationship with one another. This fits well, not only because Reitman himself wanted to make a movie that's very much focused on family, being inspired by his own father with this, but also I think it's very appropriate that the son of Ivan Reitman still made a movie that's in line with the kind of personal character dynamic movies that he's used to making, despite being more of a blockbuster, in the same way that Ivan himself made a blockbuster version of the kind of movies he would do usually. Even considering the risk of having a director who has mainly done indie films going to a big blockbuster like this, it's still very well directed, with some good cinematography, some really good special effects, and it still does a good job at maintaining a consistent tone that manages to be relatively creepy in the same way the original film was, where it was also really fun and enjoyable. I know some might have been skeptical with a lot of the marketing being not as comedic as you would initially expect from Ghostbusters, but watching the movie, it still feels lighthearted and fun. Granted, it is probably a little bit more serious in tone than the original movie was, but it's not humorless. There's still a lot of comedy. In fact, if you honestly wanted to go a darker kind of route with a property like Ghostbusters, this is how you do it. And I think part of what makes it so well done is the fact that, like I said, Jason Reitman is really good with character dynamics and making them feel relatable. Case in point with the main lead in the film, as McKenna Grace as Phoebe is an awesome new addition to the Ghostbusters franchise. She's a nerdy, kind of socially awkward girl who comes across as very likable thanks to her passion for science, and she even has some really great moments of humor there too. She even has another friend named Podcast who she works really well off of when it comes to the witty banter they have with one another. Paul Rudd is also really charming and likable, as he usually is, and fits right in with the cast in terms of this being a very comedic franchise. Also, real quick, This movie also has a fairly brief cameo from an actor I did not expect to be here that's not Ghostbusters related, and it's one of the weirdest yet gnarliest cameo sequences I have seen in the movie this year. And you have to see the movie for yourself to know who that cameo is. However, one downside I will mention character-wise is that Finn Wolfhard and his girlfriend character are kind of the weak spot here. They're not bad, but they're kind of the typical teenage relationship that this movie could have done without. Like, they feel like they're just there, and you could have kept it to just some of the kids and Paul Rudd. Still not something that ruins the movie, as this new cast serves as an appropriate one to help continue the series in a way. Though it should be noted that these new characters are the main focus for about 90% of the movie, as the original cast members don't have too much screen time admittedly, which could be seen as a disadvantage. But, as I mentioned before, because the cast they do have works so well, and the movie itself still manages to be fairly creative with some neat set pieces and creatures throughout, you don't really mind it too much. The film does hold very well as mostly its own thing set in the Ghostbusters universe, though there are still plenty of references to this series as a whole throughout, which I noticed some people consider that to be a bad thing, thanks to the arguably over-reliance on references that films nowadays have. While there are some that I felt were a bit on the cheap side, most of them weren't too overbearing to the actual story and characters made for this movie. Especially since most of that stuff that truly connects to the original film doesn't come in until the third act, which I gotta say, it's a really good ending. However, it does lead to one issue I do have with this movie. While it is a good send-off with how they conclude things for this trilogy, it does turn into more of a focus on the original film as opposed to the new film. Even then, it's not too bad because what they did as a send-off for the Ghostbusters was honestly something I could not think of a better way to execute that. If you're one of those Ghostbusters fans who have always dreamed of a third movie, I can't see how you wouldn't be satisfied with this, as this is what I would call a perfect closure to what was devoid of a lack of a third Ghostbusters movie with the original cast. Even things that I was a little bit skeptical on ended up being very well done and in good taste, especially for the late Harold Ramis, which makes me so glad that they took the time and effort to make it respectful to both the series and his legacy as well. And even though arguably it becomes too much of a fixation on the original film, I think this movie managed to have the best of both worlds still. With how well done the new and old aspects of Ghostbusters are here. The film still serves as a great passing of the torch so future installments can focus on new characters with different stories, while also serving as a great send-off and closure to a franchise that has had a dedicated fan base for years now. As far as new revivals go, Ghostbusters Afterlife does its job very well. It's by no means a masterpiece, but in terms of the tasks they were given of creating a new Ghostbusters movie that would satisfy old fans and be a good introduction for new fans, it still managed to accomplish that with a lot of respect done for both the fans, cast, and crew a part of this incredibly fun series all about busting ghosts. So take that for what it's worth. And I'm gonna give Ghostbusters Afterlife an 8 out of 10. Really fun stuff. Definitely check it out. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.
In something strange neighborhood. Who you gonna call? Ghostbusters!